Welcome back to FANSPLAINED, a media criticism podcast with Ryan and Em. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Em.
In this episode, we're back at it again at Krispy Kreme with the Netflix universe and Luke Cage Season 1. This is part of the Netflix lead into The Defenders, like the several before this, and takes place in MCU 2015 to 2016. It was produced by Marvel Television and Netflix. As usual, again, we're going to get to a point where do I even need to mention the producers?
Yes, you will when it changes over to Disney+.
Yeah, and then after a while, it'll just be that.
Yeah.
It was released in September of 2016 with 13 episodes, as is typical of most of these Netflix shows. And it is technically concurrent with Daredevil Season 2 for like a significant portion of the show, and then it follows after the events of that season. And it technically also picks up after Jessica Jones Season 1, like right after.
Yeah, because we basically find out what happens to Claire after she pieces out in Daredevil Season 2.
Yeah. So, like all these other Netflix shows, we have a bunch of various writers and directors, but the showrunner and the creator is Chio Hodari Coker, and Coker's other work included Southland, NCIS LA, Almost Human, which was sadly short-lived.
Southland was good too, actually.
Ray Donovan, the Notorious B.I.G. movie, Notorious. That's where that comes from.
That's where that painting comes from.
And Creed 2.
Oh.
The first one, the second one. Each episode was named for a Gang Starr song. Overall story structured like a music album. So it's supposed to feel like it had a beginning and an end, kind of like a concept album would.
Yeah.
But it flows and ebbs and whatever, like a music album would.
I think that worked pretty well for it, actually.
I feel like this is the one that actually has such a solid concept around its music. It really gives me like I'm off a little bit, but it really gives me like these Twin Peaks vibes where they have like the constant like guest stars coming in and doing the set in the club. It was a little Buffy the Vampire Slayer did that for the first few seasons too, where you'd occasionally have like musician guest stars doing like musical sets in the club that they go to.
Yeah.
I really love that.
I just find it funny that everything either goes back to Greek mythology for you or Twin Peaks.
Look, it's not hard. It's not hard. Especially since we're currently watching Twin Peaks, so
yeah,
it's
we are.
A lot on the brain.
We needed a break from Marvel, and we decided let's go to Twin Peaks.
Yeah, because you haven't finished it yet.
I have not.
Anyway, so, it's created also as a hip-hop western comparable to Sergio Leone. Leone?
Yeah, Sergio Leone.
Leone. I always say that wrong.
He was Italian.
Yeah. So basically, like, Luke Cage is the man with no name. Harlem's Paradise is the town saloon, etc., etc. You have the cops, you have the thieves. You
literally have the showdown instead of a shootout. It's a brawl.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the whole town is there.
Yes.
Watching them.
Yeah, and everything goes viral. It's like you have the sheriff instead of you have corrupt sheriffs in this too. Like it's really fun because like it doesn't really give you Western vibes.
It doesn't.
But it absolutely mimics the tropes of the storytelling.
It hits a lot of the beats, including our hero going off and leaving the town to find his answers and then coming back to face down the bad guy.
Yeah. We share brains, though.
It's basically like a hip-hop western, more or less.
On top of that, Coker also compared Harlem's Paradise to and called it the series' Iron Throne.
Yeah.
Which is funnier when they have that painting that's framed behind everyone who runs the club at some point or another. Like, it's this picture of Biggie where he's got, like, this crown on.
Yes.
It's like this very, iconic picture of Biggie. And every time, like, every opportunity they get, they will frame someone so it looks like they are being crowned by the crown in this photo.
Yeah, it's really great, actually.
So, like, it makes it even funnier if you're going to then compare that to it being the Iron Throne, because you're crowning someone every time, like, the power shifts in the club.
But also, now that you pointed that out, a lot of the colors that they use
are very Lannister.
They're very Lannister, but also they change, because there's orange, there's blues. It's kind of almost like house sigils, if you really want to get that.
A little bit.
You want to get that comparative with it?
On top of the just constant gold that is associated with Luke Cage in particular.
What we've started doing with these shows is that we keep pointing out where the colors appear, like, repeatedly.
Yeah, Jessica Jones was also really big on this. I think we neglected to mention it, but she's really, like, that show's really, really big on, like, the purple.
Or the blue.
This one's really big on the gold, but you'll also get a little bit of the green.
Yeah.
Not so much like Iron Fist, where it's doing the yellow and the green at the same time.
And Daredevil had a lot of the red. Like, they were already trying to do that, because then when they started advertising for Defenders, they assigned...
They could color code everything,
they assigned each Defender a primary color, pretty much. And just like, boom, boom, boom. And it was very interesting, actually, watching the show and seeing what colors they used, and also where and when the yellow showed up for Luke.
This one and Jessica Jones were honestly my favorites in terms of, like, the color storytelling in particular.
Yeah, the visual storytelling was very good.
This one is, like, the peak that every show needs to hit.
Yeah, the quality of this show was very good. Like, the locations were really great, too. Like, the theater they fought in was amazing. It was stunning.
Gorgeous.
And then you have someone break their back on one of the seats. Or they should have broke their back on one of the seats when they fell off the balcony.
Yeah, they should have, but
like,
they're too cool to do that.
It's so beautiful. Let's trash it.
Oh, my heart. So the show is also, on top of Jessica Jones, I would argue, one of the more, like, currently resonant.
Yes.
Like, it's one of the ones that connects with the real world the most. Iron Fist tries to do this. We'll get to that. It doesn't get to that.
It doesn't do it.
It doesn't do it near well enough. Jessica Jones does it because it digs into all of the, you know, like, the assault stuff, the just lack of consent in general, women having to navigate
and survivors
guilt,
and also
trauma.
Survivors having a voice.
Yeah. This one really, really digs into its culture, its music, and, like, sorry. The Coker cautioned against using specific headline comparisons, which works better for it, because otherwise it would have really felt a little too on the nose.
Yeah.
I appreciated that it was a lot more subtle. It was trying to maintain its balance between being resonant and being flat out allegorical.
Yeah.
Which I appreciated. At the same time, you also have them mentioning Black Lives Matter, but they mention it, like, offhand. They don't mention it in the exact same context we know of it. It's like somebody says it in a line that's, like, contextually slightly different, but I remember it being there enough to point it out.
Oh, yeah.
When I heard it.
Because oh crap, I'm having a brain fart, I forgot her name, but...
Was it Mariah?
Yeah, Mariah. She was, giving her little speech, you know, and just squeezed in there, and we mean to show that Black Lives Matter here.
Yeah.
And it was like,
and she said it. She said the thing. And you also have Luke's hoodie.
Yes.
Which is celebrated through the show. Like, it's very much this Regina George moment in Mean Girls, where she, like, they try and do the thing where they cut out, like, the holes in where her bra shows. And then suddenly everyone is wearing shirts with the holes cut out and letting their bras show.
Yeah.
It's very much like that, but for a reason. It just reminds me of that because it becomes this, like, big trend that everyone mimics.
Yeah, because
in Harlem, because it's this hoodie with bullet holes in it.
Yeah. And
it's very resonant, deliberately, of poor Trayvon Martin.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, you're comparing that to a dude who is black in Harlem who can't get shot.
Yeah.
Like, it's
like one of the
characters,
so good. One of the characters, like, can't remember which one, but one of them actually said, a bulletproof black man. I love to see, basically, I love to see it, or I love it, you know?
It's beautiful. Well, and you have, like, Method Man's whole rap about it.
Method Man came on there and did a whole rap dedicated to Luke.
It's a good damn song.
It is.
It's a banger. I enjoyed it.
Iron Fist could never.
Iron Fist can't do half the shit this show does.
No, but they somehow tried to force that hip-hop in there.
Again, we'll get to that, otherwise we'll have nothing to talk about when we get there. Here,
it not only it fits, but they also mix it with other musical styles, and it's just... It really is
it's also put into the story in an organic way.
Yeah.
A way that's meant to tell a story.
Yes.
And that is my problem with some of it in other shows, is it's just thrown in there for flavor. It's not really put in there with, like, thought. Like, this feels to me like the TV version of Guardians of the Galaxy, where the music means something, and it is there very deliberately.
And it just adds more layers to an already very well-crafted show, because, like, the writing, with the exception of one character, is very solid. The acting all across the board is very solid.
And even then, that one character, it came around to at the end, because basically Misty Knight starts off really cool and alluring and whatever, and then she gets really sanctimonious, and she's drinking the police Kool-Aid a little too much throughout a lot of the show.
It feels like they hand her
and she kind of goes back and forth between trusting Luke and not trusting Luke, and trusting the cops and not trusting the cops.
It feels like they hand her the idiot ball so many times.
A lot. And, like, because it feels like sometimes she'll, like, regress, when it's like, you know he wouldn't do this, though.
Yeah.
You know this is not the way this is because we saw you here an episode ago. Yeah, so her writing can be a little inconsistent, but at the same time, like, she's dealing with being really indoctrinated into believing that this system works, which is a system that doesn't really work.
No.
Not for her, not for her community, not for the people trying to help the community.
I think, it feels like by the end, that whole process for her was her trying to deal with the fact that she wanted so badly to make a difference and so badly to help that she was willing to throw her complete self in there to make it work because she thought she could.
Like, with how much of Marvel tends to be really, like, propaganda-y, because it can, especially with, like, the military and the movies, it can be a little, like...
Military porn?
We love the military. Yeah, exactly. Like, I love Captain Marvel, but there are parts of it that still feel like an Air Force commercial.
Yeah, a little bit. I
mean, I still love it, but it is a little too forgiving of the Air Force. I feel like that with all the Tony Stark movies.
Meanwhile,
the movies themselves tend to be a little, like, ass-kissy to the military, but this show in specific is very, like, critical of that. Like, you have Misty trying to, like, throw a wrench in that and be like, no, the cops are actually really good, whatever.
She literally
but, like, even by the end, she is not one.
She literally says, trust the system, like, multiple times.
Because we're like, Misty, you know the system doesn't work, what are you talking about?
And meanwhile, the Punisher is over there just dragging everyone.
Anybody who associates Frank with a cop is an idiot.
Like, you clearly did not...
You clearly missed the point of the Punisher, and you're clearly missing the point of the show, which was meant to be very critical of that system, while not being outright, like, hateful of it.
Yeah.
Which would be justified to a degree, and I fully get that, but the show is also trying to explain that to people who may not necessarily understand why.
The thing that Luke Cage and the Punisher have in common is that they both tackle a lot of things at the same time, and they both manage it very well.
Yes.
Because it could so easily get heavy-handed. It could easily...
Yeah, that's more what I mean, is it doesn't get really obvious about it. It's just...
It could so easily just go over the top, or completely miss the mark, or not stick the landing, but I feel like both of them did very well in addressing multiple issues and multiple just... And at the same time, no character ever felt like a mouthpiece either.
No, other than the character in this one that is meant to mimic
Mm-hmm.
a political mouthpiece.
Yeah.
Because that is
the
point. And even then, she's not very good at it.
And even then, by the end of the season, she's just... I shouldn't laugh about it. It's actually a really intense scene. But she's killing everybody, pushing them out windows and smashing them up.
She really is. She really is. So Harlem's Paradise was also actually based on real nightclubs in Harlem, such as the Cotton Club, which, again, is funny because Cottonmouth.
Cottonmouth.
And the Lenox Lounge, which is the one that I think it mimics more. It just kind of mimics the other one in name.
I mean,
and
probably...
But it's kind of like an amalgamation of the two.
Yeah.
They also drew inspiration from the Apollo, which they filmed parts of the show in. I think that was when they were in the movie theater.
Mm-hmm.
Or part of it, because, like, the actual theater that they fight in is not the Apollo, because I remember thinking it was the Apollo, and then I looked it up, and it wasn't that.
Yeah, it's Small's Paradise, was that it?
I think so. Or Small's Paradise wasn't... No, I think that one's an actual, like, nightclub, because they took the inspiration for that. They also had, like, the historical anchors with the locations and details, like Harlem Paradise's, like, Prohibition basement, which is a thing that at least one of those clubs, I think it might have been Small's Paradise, maybe, like, those clubs actually did have those things.
Oh, yeah.
Because they were around during the Prohibition, so they would have had them.
Yeah, a lot of clubs had to do that in order to circumvent Prohibition, and that's not even getting into all of the trade routes and all the business that that had.
Like, it's a really multi-layered show, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And then you also have the Pop Swear Jar, was originally an attempt to get Prince to sign on to the show before he died, because they started production right before he passed away.
Oh.
And so the Swear Jar was actually a thing to try and get him to come onto the show.
Oh, wow.
Because Prince had his own swear jar because he was a devout Jehovah's Witness.
Oh.
Ooh.
Mm.
So they were trying to, like, pay homage to Prince a little bit with that swear jar. That's where that came from, was Prince. You're welcome.
Every time someone mentions Jehovah's Witnesses, ugh.
I know.
I'm back to being that old man from L.A. Noire. Like, no.
So, the summary basically is Luke Cage, this dude who can't get shot, he's bulletproof, rolls up into Harlem trying to look to, you know, basically lay low after the events of Jessica Jones and the murder of his wife.
Because he's bulletproof everywhere but his heart.
Yes. Also because he's technically an ex-con.
That too.
An escaped ex-con. And he's trying to lay low from the police, but he can't do that because he's too good.
He's way too good.
He's too good, and he can't hide how good he is. So he has to be a hero because he can't not be.
He also cannot hide how he is just a sassy book nerd, really.
He and Frank. I want he and Frank to just, like, buddy up.
And do a book
over
club.
their book club.
Yeah, make their own book club. I want it.
Yeah, same.
Produce it, Disney. Do it now.
Basically, it's Luke coming into Harlem as a somewhat outsider and being welcomed into the community by a large majority of the community and being shunned from the community from the people who kind of just want to control all of it themselves.
Yeah, because he's hedging in on their business.
Yeah, and how that all comes together. That's basically the biggest
that's
thing.
That's
and
the
then
most
we
simple...
find out how he became bulletproof, basically.
Yeah, that's basically the simplest plot that we can give it. It gets a bit more complicated than that, but just even when it splits off into other directions, it all manages to come back together pretty nicely.
Pretty well. Like, I hear a lot of complaints that the show is a little too slow, and I don't think so.
I didn't think so.
I didn't feel like it dragged at all, and we have watched quite a few that do. Daredevil Season 2.
We have watched a lot of Netflix Marvel shows at this point. We have literally been to 4 different seasons of shows.
Pretty rapid succession.
And I can tell you that Luke Cage never really felt slow to me.
Like, not even when you're getting his backstory as a preacher's son. Like, I thought that was very interesting and intriguing.
I loved how they did that. I love the visual storytelling of switching between the kids and present day Luke.
I still find it very funny that they shot that in not Georgia.
Not Georgia.
Now, you'd know.
I would know.
But they shot that in not Georgia.
The minute I heard Luke was from Savannah, Georgia, I'm like, hey! Me too! It was really cool.
Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, I kind of liked Cottonmouth more than Diamondback. I'll give it that.
Yeah, Diamondback got a little crazy.
Yeah, but you're just coming in to do, like, the good old Western showdown at that point, and I'm for it.
I liked Cottonmouth and how complicated he was, and Diamondback, at first, I thought he was going to be, like, the Bill character, you know, like, in Kill Bill.
Oh, yeah.
And then he just kind of... And
then
he put on...
That would be largely my only complaint about it, is he just doesn't kind of keep the momentum up.
Yeah, he doesn't. Like, when he first shows up, it's really...
He's rad as hell. I'm like, ooh, yes. Yes, I love this drama.
But then as it goes on, you're just kind of like, guy, you're going a little too hard here.
And you're not as, like, fun as this other dude who was also terrible, but we enjoyed watching him be terrible.
And then he puts on the real steel... No, the steel uniform that Shaquille O'Neal had in that movie.
Oh, God.
I had to look it up and show her what it looked like. And I kept going, doesn't it look like this?
Yeah, a little bit
During
it did.
that fight.
It absolutely did.
I feel like I'm the only person that remembers that random-ass movie, because I'd always see the cover for it in the video store.
Hey, remember when?
I never rent it, because it looked dumb.
Hey, remember Smurfs? Y'all remember Smurfs? Isn't that funny? So, primary actors, we have Mike Coulter returning from Jessica Jones as the titular character. Rosario Dawson also returning. This time she's a leading character.
Ooh, woo.
Mahershala Ali, who plays Cornell Stokes / Cottonmouth.
Mahershala Ali.
I can't say names.
Ali.
We've established that I cannot say names, but Mahershala.
Oscar-winning Mahershala Ali.
I just can't say names, and you know this. I can't pronounce anything. I was not a hooked on phonics kid.
Neither was I. I was a Dr. Seuss kid. So.
I taught myself how to read by just looking, which is why I can't pronounce for shit. Awful. It's awful. I taught myself how to read by just reading in my head, so I never pronounced a lot of it aloud. So you have Simone Missick as Misty Knight, Alfred Wolford. I can't.
I can't read. Alfred Woodard.
Thank you, I can't read. As Mariah Dillard. See, I was getting all those words mixed up right there. Who is not the same character as her character in Civil War. No. But their names were so similar that I almost thought they were the same person.
You did. You had a minute
I had
you
to
were
go
like,
look
oh my god.
I'm like, oh my god, are these the same person? No.
You did. You had a moment.
I kept expecting like her son to pop up or whatever, but it's not the same character. Then you have Theo Rossi as Shades. Piece of shit Shades is. Not the actor, just that character. I just wanted to punch him in the face a lot.
Yeah, we did not like him.
I mean, I think that's the point, is that you want to punch him in the face a lot. But he's like this dude coming in to like control all these people in Harlem, so he's just like, but these people don't work for you. This is really kind of gross. Can you leave?
He's also just a creep in general.
Yeah, he is.
That's why it was so fun to see Claire and Misty beat his ass.
Yes, I loved that.
And then step on his shades.
Yas.
Yeah, try wearing those, motherfucker.
And then you have Eric LaRae Harvey as Diamondback. And then secondary characters, I had to go look one of these up because it wasn't included in the Wikipedia. How dare they? Frankie Faison, I think that's how you say that, as Pop. That was the one that was not on Wikipedia, and I'm like, he was a major character. Are you serious?
Pop was a major character. Just because he dipped out a little early, that does not mean he was not important.
He was there through the whole show.
Pretty much.
Even if he wasn't there.
He was there in spirit.
He was Uncle Ben.
He was Luke's Uncle Ben.
He was literally Luke's Uncle Ben because he gave the whole responsibility and power speech, and then he died.
Yes.
Then you had Frank Whaley as Detective Scarf, who is the corrupt police officer.
Yeah,
who is Misty's partner.
Yeah, I didn't like that guy either.
I don't think you were supposed to. And then you had Jacob Vargas as Domingo Colon.
I like Domingo.
Which I kept reading as colon, because we watch it with the subtitles on, and that's how it's spelled as colon, and that's all, that's all my brain could think.
I like Domingo because it kept reminding me of Cinema Snob doing Mandingo.
I just like Domingo because he was just kind of there to be sassy at people. And I was like, yes, I approve, because these people need this.
I did not appreciate him wasting the Milky Ways, though.
No.
That was rude.
And then you also had Ron Cephas. I hope that's how you say that.
I guess.
Cephas Jones as Bobby Fish.
Who
I knew his name was Fish, but I did not know his full name was Bobby Fish until I looked it up. And I'm like, you literally named him Bobby Fisher?
Yeah,
Are
they
you
said
serious?
that.
I missed
that in the
part.
show. I loved him. I loved him.
He was great. No, he was beautiful. I loved him.
I loved him trash talking everybody. It was great.
Mm-hmm. And then cameos included Parisa Fitz-Henley, who we covered in Jessica Jones a little bit, continuing to play Luke's late wife. And then you had, Rob Morgan as Turk. Rachel Taylor does like a voice cameo as Trish, like on her podcast radio show thing.
It's a radio show, it's not a podcast.
They kind of frame it like it could be either.
No.
Whatever. Anyway, her show. And she talks about Luke, and it's kind of like, ha-ha. And then you had Danny Johnson as Ben Donovan, who is Kingpin's lawyer, who showed up in previous stuff before. And Steven Ryder as Blake Tower, who took over for Samantha Reyes when she died in Daredevil Season 2.
She got shot up.
She absolutely did. So, the director of photography was Manuel Billiter. I keep messing that one up. We've already talked about his previous work because he handled Jessica Jones. But he also worked with the director of episode 1 and 2, who is Paul McGuigan? McGuigan? I think that's how you say that. McGuigan. McGuigan? That's probably more correct. To establish the look of the show, and McGuigan was hired due to his work on a single episode of BBC Sherlock, which was a scandal in Belgravia.
Yeah, and after I basically saw more of the episode, I was like, oh, I see it. Especially with the shootout scene and everything.
Yeah. It also wears its influence very deliberately on its sleeves. You can see Shaft, you can see Barbershop, you can see Spike Lee, you can see all this 70s blaxploitation movies.
Yep.
You can see Jackie Brown mostly because it also mimics blaxploitation movies. I just tend to think that it does Jackie Brown better than Jackie Brown.
Well, it helps that it's not written by Tarantino.
I mean, yes, it does.
So.
Yes, it does.
It has that working for it.
Yeah, well, yeah, because a lot of Jackie Brown ends up being about everyone else.
Except Jackie Brown.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a half hour. Like, I watched Jackie Brown right after we finished Luke Cage. And, because I went back to it, I hadn't seen it in years. And, like, it takes 30 minutes to even get back to Jackie from that introductory scene. Like, are you kidding me?
I mean, it looks really good visually.
It's a 2.5 hour long movie. Someone needed to tell Tarantino to, like, dial it back, bud. Because the only interesting part of it is the fact that Jackie is working all of these people against each other. I do not need to see a half hour of Samuel L. Jackson. He's a great actor, and I actually really like him in this, but...
He has an awful hairstyle.
Yes, he does. But there was so much there with, like, all the, like, girlfriends that he has in different apartments and stuff. Like, there was so much of that you could have just cut out because it was so unnecessary.
But, bro, look.
I know it's Tarantino. I'm just like, he needed to dial it back. It's 2.5 hours long, and...
you could say that about many of Tarantino's movies.
A fifth of it isn't even about Jackie Brown.
You could say that about many of Tarantino's movies, especially the more recent one, like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, The Hateful Eight. Those movies all felt incredibly
We don't even talk about The Hateful Eight because the whole thing is just bad.
The whole thing is, all of them are stupidly long. Visually, sure, they look great. The casts are usually impressive, but the more Tarantino seems to go, he never really seems to...
Well, see, this does Western better than The Hateful Eight does, too.
It does.
Said it.
Actually.
Said it, and I'm not sorry. It references stuff constantly as well.
Also, that's the other thing. This show is 13 episodes long. The story is tighter. More happens, and it's actually... It maintains its focus better than a freaking movie.
Yeah.
That Quentin, just ends up... I don't even know what he ends up doing anymore.
Yeah, he's made one good movie in, like, the last however many years.
I like the 2 Kill Bill movies. That's mainly
Yeah,
because...
well, I mean, Inglourious Bastards came after that, and then it was, like, his last good movie.
That's true.
He did call it his magnum opus, so, I mean, should have stopped there, bud. Anyway, not the point.
We went off on a tangent.
We did, but this movie wears a lot of its inspirations on its sleeves, but at the same time, it references stuff constantly, too.
It does.
Like, it's constantly name-dropping other media. Like, the whole opening scene where they're talking basketball, and to be fair, that whole opening scene is, like, in a foreign language to me, because I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I only know that you mentioned Jordan and Kobe, so I know that you're talking about basketball, but other than that, I have no fucking idea what you're talking about.
I mean, that's how
Great.
that's how I usually feel when people talk about sports, because I never got into sports, my family was never into sports. The closest they came to was college basketball, or in my dad's case, NASCAR, which...
Yeah. Well, and I mean,
I never liked that shit
We
either.
live in Seattle. I have to tune out a lot of Seahawks talk. Like, a lot of it. But at the same time, like, this, I didn't feel like I had to tune it out. It was still very interesting the way that they talked with each other, and, like, the dynamics between these characters were still interesting enough that I didn't have to tune out all of the conversation I didn't understand.
Yeah.
I just didn't understand the conversation. It's fine.
Especially when, you know, they slip in, like, book talk here and there, and I'm like, oh, hey, I understand that reference.
Doing a Steve Rogers thing, I understood that.
Yes.
Yep.
Now you're speaking in a language I can understand.
And like all of these Netflix shows, it has, like, that one big fight scene.
Yes.
Because Daredevil had it, so everybody has to have one.
Everybody gets one.
And this one...
Just like everybody
has one of the best ones outside of Daredevil, honestly, I think.
Just like everybody gets to have a scene where they fall in a dumpster or trash.
Yeah. But I feel like this one does it best outside of Daredevil.
Yeah.
And that fight scene where the couch, like, flies out of the window.
I love that.
And then we come back to the fight.
Yes, I love
like, they actually pulled the fight inspiration from Terminator.
I could see that.
And the show was also filmed in the same areas of New York City as American Gangster, and then a bunch of other places.
American Gangster was a good movie. Denzel versus Russell Crowe.
And like Kilgrave's subtle purples, you also had Stokes wearing, like, subtle shades of green in the same way. Like, they designed his costumes in the same way.
Yeah.
So that he looked kind of like a snake, right? Ha! And this show actually won an Emmy for its stunt work.
Good. It deserved a lot more than that.
Like, the music alone was like...
It deserved way more than that.
This is also one of the most interconnected of the Netflix series into the greater MCU.
It references the most.
It references a ton. And it's actually not, like, because they'll reference, like, well, one of the greatest strengths of this Netflix show is it doesn't connect to the MCU, but I think that this is one of its greater strengths, is it builds on a lot of, like, minor plot arcs that you wouldn't expect anything to build on. So, one of, like, the main things is not necessarily the fact that everything mentions the incident from the Avengers, because it doesn't really mention it that much. What it does is it constantly references Justin Hammer.
And Thor.
And Thor, but mostly because of Thor's hammer related to Hammer Industries. Haha, get it? But it constantly references Justin Hammer because that's where everybody's getting their technology, because we're talking about a bunch of ex-cons who probably met with Justin in prison. Because they all went to the same prison Justin did.
That's Seagate. I love that Luke Cage actually makes Justin Hammer more important than Iron Man 2 did.
This show actually makes him a lot more competent than Iron Man 2 did, too, because these weapons somehow work.
Somehow.
Which is hilarious, because I'm like, shouldn't these weapons be, like, breaking all the time? Wasn't that supposed to be the joke? But maybe it's not, because Justin's not the one specifically in charge of Hammer Industries right now, because he's in prison.
Actually, it's not realistic to the characterization, so it's bad writing.
No, I think it's just that someone else is in charge of Hammer Industries, and he's too busy in prison with his boyfriend.
Someone more competent, yeah.
Yeah,
and yes,
exactly.
Justin has a boyfriend, so.
Yes, we brought that up.
That was a really good short. I'm still very happy and impressed with that.
Yeah, so that is the same prison that we see referenced here. It also, like, it mentions Hammer Industries so much that I'm like, are we watching an Iron Man movie?
No.
Except no, because it's the TV show of it's the Iron Man of TV show. Except it's not Iron Man, but you get what I mean. It's like the high quality one.
Diamondback's little freaking fist things kind of remind me of what was Tony's first suit?
Yeah, a little bit.
The Ironmonger or whatever it was.
A little bit. You also see, and then it like seriously connects back to all of like the Netflix stuff in specific. So you see a flyer for Colleen's to be introduced classes.
Yep.
You get name drops for both Fisk and Castle, especially since Fisk's lawyer is there. Mm-hmm. Claire is a major character in it, so I mean, you can't really ignore that. And then you get all like the cameos on top of everything else.
Yes.
My one thing where it doesn't connect that I have questions about is they never once mention Bruce Banner in a way where he broke Harlem, quote unquote. And you'd think that to these people that would be a bigger deal than the quote Avengers incident, because that didn't affect Harlem. Bruce did.
Bruce allegedly did, but
I'm supposed to believe that Luke is a bigger threat to Harlem than Bruce Banner.
Yes.
Who, quote, broke Harlem in his own words that we saw.
Yes. You're supposed
I'm sorry,
to
no,
that.
I don't buy that.
You're supposed to.
Well, I don't, because we're just pretending the Hulk didn't do that now, and I refuse to forgive him for his sins that easily.
Because the plot demands that you forget.
No,
yes.
I won't. So, the composers for the show were Adrian Young and Ali Shaheed Muhammad.
Hey, you did it.
I did, and Ali Shaheed used to be in a band called A Tribe Called Quest.
Oh.
And they drew some inspiration from, like, the band's discography. Young was he's more known as, like, a music producer than a composer, but he has done some compositions. Mm-hmm. And he did the music for Black Dynamite.
Nice.
And they obviously pulled inspiration from Ennio
Morricone.
Obviously, because it sounds like a Tarantino movie, but it sounds more like a Tarantino movie than a Tarantino movie.
Yeah, except he is a very well-known Italian composer who also did actually compose many of those older westerns. Mm-hmm. That's why they ended up being called spaghetti westerns, because they had so much Italian production involved.
That, and they got a lot of Italians to play the Native Americans in those movies.
That too.
Unfortunately.
But I will say, I love a lot of his soundtracks.
No, his soundtracks are bangers.
Especially for the Mission and Lolita. Those two soundtracks are some of the best ones I think he's ever done.
Yeah.
But I'm not that big of a Western person either. So.
No, I'm not really either. And they also pulled inspo from Wu-Tang.
Yeah.
And then, like we mentioned earlier, they had an original rap song called Bulletproof Love by Method Man.
Which
that just, like, dropped in the middle of the show.
It was so great.
It was very good. I was like, yes, this is good.
Yes.
This is good. Because usually, like, when they do stuff like that in shows, I'm like, God, this is so cringy. Can we just stop?
This was not
cringy. I loved it.
This was not cringy. It felt organic. It was well written. It had a good beat. It was very fitting, and I'm like, yeah, that's right. You write that rap for Luke.
But the thing I also love about this is on top of the music selection it uses, and on top of the musical guests that they have popping in every episode.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like all of that overshadowed the score either, because the score is really good.
The score is really good. It was one of it's one of those things about this show that actually stand out, where in a lot of other shows you don't always notice the score. Like, I noticed the score sometimes in Daredevil.
I noticed it in Jessica Jones.
Yeah, I noticed it in Jessica Jones, and you notice it here.
Yeah. A lot. Because, if you're gonna sit there and tell me that your season was based on the format of an album, your music better damn well live up to that.
Especially if it's going to take place in Harlem, of all
right?
places.
And it does. Like, you get the spirit of Harlem, you get a lot of, like, the look and color of it. It's all very pretty. I really like it. It doesn't have, like, on top of, like, aside from, like, the yellow lighting that pops up in, like, significant moments, they don't do, like, that whole, you know, when you get to, like, some movies that are kind of based on that era or that area, where they have that, like, yellow wash on them.
Yeah.
It doesn't do that.
Like sepia?
Yeah, it has, like, this light sepia wash on it to make it look kind of, like, old and dirty and whatever. Like, it doesn't have that.
No, one of the strongest things about this show is just how vibrant it is. You have colors in all the buildings, you have colors outside, you have the...
It's all very pretty.
Yeah, it's very well done. And also all the costumes, the clothes that people wear, none of it really looks cheap or drab.
Even when you have Luke's cringy costume.
Yes.
Which is meant as a joke, to be fair.
I loved it. It was so dumb looking, but
it was just like a fun little gag. They didn't make him sit in the Power Man costume, thank
Especially
God.
when they gave him all that hair.
Oh my God.
It was like, Luke, please.
I was looking at a completely different person with all that hair.
I'm like, Luke, please. Do something.
Get a haircut, please, bud. Please,
don't let it grow out that far.
Like, the one good thing Reva did was getting that man a haircut.
Yes. And also getting him all those tight shirts.
Right? Thanks, Reva.
Like, that's the other thing that I appreciated about this show. Was that normally, you know, you have all the women throwing themselves at the man and it's eye-roll worthy. This has to be the most realistic depiction of a thirst trap that I've ever seen, because you're damn right all these women want to fuck him.
Okay, I'm not even sure it's just the chicks, though, to be fair, like...
The men are either jealous of him or they want to fuck him too, and I can't blame any of them, because damn!
Look at that man!
Look at him! Power man indeed.
Right.
Powered up. Fucking.
So I think I know the answer to this, but if you had to give Luke Cage season 1 a rating, what would it be?
He's got the power to thrust them hips everywhere.
Oh my God, that is not an answer.
A 5 out of 5.
Okay, actually. So maybe it was an answer. I had a feeling it was going to be that. I would have to agree with you. It's solid. This is what I want every MCU TV show to be, is this.
Yes.
And I'm so mad at myself for having slept on it so long. Because it's absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, I remember hearing about it a lot, and then it went, another
I didn't even hear about it a lot. I just knew that it came, and then I never heard another thing about it.
And that's such a damn shame, because this is a very good show.
This is like peak show, but like the...
Yes.
The way the fandom responds to it, at least the end of fandom that I see, because I realize that my scope is a little limited here. The end of fandom that we see, the silence on it makes it come off like it's just as bad as Iron Fist.
When it is the
exact opposite.
The exact opposite. It succeeds.
Like, it was a shame to watch Iron Fist following this.
It succeeds in every way that Iron Fist fails. If you need a higher recommendation, that's the best I can give you. That it is really that good. Because the acting is so solid, the cast is so good.
The music's great.
The
coloring's great.
You get so invested in the story and the characters, and Luke is fleshed out so impeccably. He looks great in all the shirts.
Yes.
Like, I don't know,
I also really like that black hoodie with, like, the gold insert.
Yes.
Oh, beautiful.
I love that. And he just kept flipping it on, flipping it off. Flip on my hoodie.
Yes. So, that said, thank you for listening to this episode of FANSPLAINED. If you enjoy what we do, consider donating on Ko-fi. Everything we make goes right back into the production quality of the show. We appreciate all of our subscribers and everything you do, and we're thankful for anything from Hulk smashing that like button and actually doing it, because that happened, Mariah. To your questions and comments on each episode, and especially sharing the show with your friends. FANSPLAINED is the weekly media criticism and deep dive podcast, and we're currently still working our way through the chronological order of the Marvel Cinematic Universe for now. Next episode, we're continuing our detour into street level NYC with Iron Fist Season 1. God help us.
God help everyone.
We watched it so you don't have to.
We did.
You can find our updates here on YouTube as well as on Twitter and Ko-fi at FANSPLAINED. If you want more of our conversations on the MCU and other fandoms, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell for new episode notifications. So until next time, Salt Shakers, this has been Ryan.
And M.
With the FANSPLAINED podcast, and we will see you next episode.